Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Mindful Balance Pursuit. Today, I'm talking about Shakespeare and how he would have made out in today's world and how we compare to Shakespeare. Very interesting. You know, I always was intimidated by Shakespeare. It was that thing in high school that I sucked at, English class, and I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand the words, that old English kind of wordage. I couldn't understand it at all. Anyways, so I'm always trying to do things that I'm kind of uncomfortable with, and I wrote some things down here about the man, and I'm not talking about his plays and his poems and stuff like that. I was more curious about William Shakespeare himself and the life he led and that sort of thing. So I started doing some research on him and watched a few documentaries. I had no idea um, all the shit that guy's been through. It's something else, and it's pretty inspiring because throughout his life, all the troubles he had and all the challenges he had, he still became who he became, the most recognizable playwright of all time, the most famous of all time. And nobody uses the English language quite as well as he did. Very interesting. I want to go over a bit on his life. And again, like, why didn't we learn this in school? Like, we were always doing, like, the plays, and okay, today we're doing Hamlet, and you're like, hey, awesome. And Romeo, Juliet, I don't know. I still didn't really watch the plays. I read more about the man. I'm much more interested about him and his life than the plays. Um, but they are more interesting once you learn about him. So, anyways, here we go. We're getting into it. Shakespeare, how would it shake out for him in 2024? I think he would do really well. He had a hard life. He was born in 1564, so quite a while ago, and a lot of challenges. Believe it or not, sound a lot like guys and girls challenges today. So, to get into it, he was kind of like a middle class family. But his family did get into some money problems. His dad got into some hot water with taxes because he wasn't paying his taxes to the church. And so that resulted in some pretty heavy fines for his father, and that put a lot of financial pressure on the family. And then when you lose that financial status, you lose a bit of your social status too, right? Back then. Well, and today too, let's be honest. So, today we're dealing with very similar issues with job markets that are all over the place. And just like Shakespeare, things were uncertain. There were economic pressures in his time, and there are economic pressures in our time, certainly. So, so these are things that never really change, right? We're always going to have economic ups and downs. And then there's the whole issue, like Shakespeare, I'm sure, dealt with, like, how does your passion clash with job to make money, your financial, expectations from your family, and that those are always going to clash. Luckily, Shakespeare made his wealth through his passion, and you can too. It's very, very possible. Yeah, and so back then it was expected for sons to follow in their dad's footsteps. Shakespeare, obviously a playwright and a poet. His dad was a glove maker and a tradesman, so totally different. But even today, parents have big expectations from their kids, and it's just how it is, right? It's human nature. So very, very similar kind of social issues there as a young man. And today, societal expectations, they're still a thing for us today, to be a success, to the evolving definitions of masculinity and what it is to be a man today, and what the role of the man and the woman is today always seems to be changing and flip flopping back and forth. And so, these societal issues or definitions were definitely evolving back then also. So Shakespeare, he had a rough time too with the Globe Theatre shutting down right in the peak of his popularity, the Globe Theatre, where he and his group of actors were performing. That shut down for a couple of years because of the plague. And I mean, very similar to us, right? With COVID-19, we lost like 2 years of our lives due to COVID. And so you could imagine back then with the plague, like today with COVID everything shutting down and kind of giving us some sketchy job markets and people losing their jobs, small businesses losing a lot of money. We had a very scientific approach to COVID, but back then they would have had that mentality, right? They would have had the plague killing people, and then it's like, is this what's going on here? Is this God punishing us? Like, what is happening? So I can imagine the fear that was surrounded by that, and how mentally draining that must have been. So I think going through COVID, I mean, Shakespeare would have laughed that off, I think. But it's just interesting to me that when I read that the Globe Theater shut down because of the plague, and he couldn't work. It just was really interesting. And I didn't do too much research, but I know he had two brothers that died, and I wonder if that was because of that. I'd have to look into that more. So yeah, there is some personal stuff with him. Shakespeare did lose his son. His son's name was Hamnet, not to be confused with Hamlet, the character in one of his plays. But Hamnet Shakespeare, he was the twin brother of Judith, and he unfortunately died at the age of 11. So yeah, and Hamnet's death isn't really definitely known, the cause, because historical records didn't really touch on personal events like that too much. But losing someone is never easy, and I know people who have lost children at a young age, and people have lost children at birth, and it's never easy, right? Throughout time, that'll never be an easy thing. So personal struggles like relationships, health, death, you name it, Shakespeare has been familiar with all of it, and so it kind of teaches us to find strength when life gets tough through his story. He also had some criticism in his marriage. His marriage got some side eye. He was 18 when he got married. His wife, Anne, was in her late 20s. So there's a bit of an age gap there. And they also got married under wedlock because she was pregnant and they had to rush a wedding. So they had kind of a shotgun wedding there. And they had to cough up a lot of money to speed the process along and get that marriage certificate. So what a rascal. So yeah, it's definitely, you know, the more I learn about him, the more it's just like really kind of not hilarious, but it's really interesting. Yeah, it happens to a lot of us, right? You're in a relationship, people have children before they're married, or possibly even before they have a home, and it that causes some financial stress and stress on the relationship sometimes. And these are all issues that are not new issues to us at all. So then on the personal side, he also got some side eye and some criticism on his plays, where critics were being not so nice on his work, going as far as to making their own plays just to criticize his. And so I'm like, that's literally social media right now. Like, I could make a YouTube video and someone can make a YouTube video saying, here's everything that's wrong with Tom's YouTube video. Like, this happens all the time, right? Same with Instagram, TikTok, and all the social media platforms. So yeah, dealing with different opinions, that's been something that's been going on since ever, and it never gets easier. But you could almost laugh that even Shakespeare had public criticism over snobby playwrights that would make their own plays criticizing his. And it we know this because it angered him to a point where he actually based some characters off of these criticisms. So yeah, when we connect the dots to the 16th century to now, it's pretty cool to see that the challenges Shakespeare faced are still ringing through today, for young men and women. So I want to give this quote though, because I mean, I can't talk about Shakespeare and not quote at least something, right? Um, and the quote is this, and I'm going to try to translate it the best I can, but this is what I get from it. So the quote, this above all, to thin own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. And that's the quote. It's short, but basically be yourself no matter what. is what I get from that. Be yourself no matter what. To thine own self be true, and it must follow, as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. That's what I get from that. And I think it's a great little quote, um, in a very complicated way I never would have understood in high school. Basically, be yourself no matter what is what I take from that. Yeah, so guys, just remember, if you do look into Shakespeare and his plays, I would encourage you to definitely give it another look. As we've grown as adults, it's really interesting how we can compare and relate to Shakespeare a lot more than we did when we were 16 years old in English, high school English class. And life's a mess, and Shakespeare kind of reminds us of this. And society's expectations are always different from what your expectations of yourself may be, and just don't let it cramp your style. So when things get tough, remember the quote, to thin own self be true. Be yourself no matter what. Embrace the challenges that make you strong. Like Shakespeare inspires us to face each day with creativity and to believe in ourselves. So, in simple terms, guys, stand tall and be yourself, and know that your story is still unfolding just like his was. And keep going, dream big, and remember that life's just getting started, and there's a lot of things you're going to face yet, and a lot of things you're going to overcome still. So, thanks for watching. My name's Tom. This is another short little episode, Mindful Balance Pursuit. Subscribe if you like what I've been dishing out. It would mean a lot, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye.